Imagine getting fined by your HOA for keeping your boat on a lake that you actually own. That's right, they tried to punish me for using my own property. But when they pushed too far, I reminded them who really controlled the water. And let's just say they didn't like what happened next. Before we start, let me know which country you're watching this video from in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more real-life HOA and Karen revenge stories every week. The story started a few summers ago, right after I retired from the Navy. I bought a small house with a big view, a calm, sparkling lake surrounded by thick trees and winding trails. It wasn't a gated community, but there was a nearby neighborhood run by a local HOA that covered part of the lakeshore. My property, however, sat outside their borders. My land deed even included a portion of the lake itself, the section where I kept a small dock and a modest fishing boat. Life was peaceful. I'd spend mornings drinking coffee on the dock, afternoons taking the boat out for short rides, and evenings listening to the water ripple under the moonlight. It was perfect, until the HOA got involved. At first, it started with subtle things. A note appeared on my door one morning with a logo from the Silver Pines HOA. It said, "All watercraft must be registered with the association before use." I ignored it, assuming they'd made a mistake. I wasn't part of any HOA, and the lake was clearly divided by property lines. But a week later, another note came. Then another. Each one sounded more aggressive than the last. Warnings about violations, unauthorized structures, and non-compliance fees. Finally, I got an envelope labeled "Final Notice, $500 fine due." I laughed out loud when I opened it. They were fining me for parking my own boat on my own dock in water I owned. The letter came signed by the HOA president, a woman named Karen, of course, along with her list of approved dock guidelines. The document read like a royal decree. Everything had to match their design code. Beige railings, no fishing gear left outside, and no unsightly boats visible from across the lake. I decided to ignore it. But ignoring Karen was like waving a red flag in front of a bull. The next weekend, I saw her standing near the end of the public trail with two other HOA board members. They were pointing across the water at my dock. A few days later, I noticed a small notice nailed to a tree by the waterline. HOA restricted area, no unauthorized watercraft. That's when I realized they were trying to claim the lake as theirs. Apparently, the HOA had convinced their members that the entire lake was a community amenity. They'd even started collecting maintenance fees for it, even though half of the shoreline, including my section, was privately owned. Then came the last straw. One afternoon, I came home to find a bright orange sticker plastered on my boat that read, "Violation, must be removed immediately." Alongside it was another $1,000 fine taped to my door. They'd crossed the line. So I did what any responsible property owner would do. I gathered my paperwork. I went to the county office, pulled the original survey, and made sure every detail was recorded. Not only did I own the land my house sat on, but my deed explicitly included water rights for the entire section of the lake extending 150 feet from my shoreline. In short, the HOA's community lake included water that legally belonged to me. I sent them a formal notice stating that any further trespassing or enforcement attempts would be met with legal action. I thought that would be enough. But a few days later, I caught them fishing from my dock. 3 people, one of them Karen herself, with lawn chairs, coolers, and fishing rods, sitting there like they owned the place. My dock had private property signs on it, but they didn't care. That was the last time I stayed quiet. I called the sheriff's department. When the officers arrived, they confirmed exactly what I already knew. The dock and surrounding water are privately owned. Karen and her group were trespassing. Watching the look on her face when she was told to pack up and leave was satisfying enough, but I wasn't done. I filed a formal no trespass order through the county. That meant anyone from the HOA caught entering my property or my section of the lake could be charged. To make sure there was no misunderstandings, I installed clear signs along the waterline reading, "Private Lake Section, HOA Access Prohibited." Karen didn't take it well. She tried to fight back by calling an emergency HOA meeting. Their plan was to sue me for restricting community access. But the county records left no room for argument. My attorneys sent them a cease and desist letter, backed by official maps and the deed. When that didn't work, I went a step further. I built a small, floating barrier along my section of the lake. Simple buoys connected by rope, clearly marking where private property began. Then I installed motion cameras on the dock to capture any unauthorized use. The next weekend, a few HOA members tried to take their kayaks across the buoy line. When they hit the buoy line, they turned around fast. A few days later, Karen showed up again, shouting from across the water. But this time, she wasn't bold enough to set foot on my dock. Her reputation crumbled quickly after that. Word spread through the neighborhood that she'd been lying about the lake ownership for years. Homeowners realized they'd been paying lake maintenance fees for a body of water the HOA didn't even own. Members started demanding refunds, and the board meetings turned chaotic. Eventually, the county stepped in and forced the HOA to update their records, removing any mention of the lake from their charter. Karen was voted out not long after. I kept my dock, my boat, and my peace. The lake stayed as calm as it had been before the chaos, except now it was blissfully quiet. No HOA meetings, no fines, no entitled trespassers pretending to be in charge. Every now and then, I still see some of the old HOA members walking the public trail on the far side of the lake. They wave awkwardly, but never cross the line. I wave back with a smile, knowing they learned the hard way not to mess with someone who actually knows what they own. And my boat, it still sits right there on my dock, polished and shining under the sun. A small reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply standing your ground.